decade, there's a few television shows that really hit. There's a lot of shows that come and go, and they're forgettable. Some don't make it very far, and are just kind of there. But there's just a few. You count one hand, really, television shows that really resonate with people and help define the decade of what it is. And when you're working on it, you don't always realize that's what it is when you're starting out. Well, we're celebrating today a show that is one of those. I can't believe it's been 20 stinking years. Time has flown. But we're doing something very special today in that we are celebrating that show. We have some casts. We have the department head makeup artist from the show. We have people that kind of came and played on the show, some at the beginning, some at the end. But all of it was a fantastic show to have in Los Angeles. And we got to be able to be a part of it. I've got a cross-section of folks I want to tell you about who I have here. First off is David De Leon. I want to tell you, all these guys have gone on to greatness, doing some fun things. That's what I want you to understand. You know them all from Buffy, but I want you to understand everything else they've done since. We're thrilled to have David with us here today. He's an Emmy Award-winning makeup artist, and he's very distinguished. He's very much sought after and highly respected. You've seen his work on films and television shows, but where he's really shining right now currently is doing people like Barbra Streisand, Jane Fonda, Ellen DeGeneres, Sarah Michelle Gellar, you might have heard of her before, he's making them look great every single day and letting them be shine. So we're thrilled to have David. Another one is my good friend Tom Surprenant, who's been a constant presence at IMATS all over the world, and 30 years he's been doing this. He has been nominated for 3 Emmys, and he got to take home 2, so he's got his bookends, and he's contributed to lots of shows, including Maze Runner, The Scorch Trials, and the sci-fi show Defiance. And you definitely should know his work for his contribution to Delium Tools. There's some fantastic brushes and things that really help in our field that he's contributed to. They're awesome. And most of us probably wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Todd McIntosh, who was the department head makeup artist on the show. And you probably know him here. He's well known here in Vancouver because he wrote the curriculum for Blanche McDonald, which he still is the executive director for. He has 2 Emmy Awards, and he has 12 nominations. And he got his very, very, very first Emmy was in 1998 for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the second was for Pushing Up Daisies. And last but not least, we have a cast member from the show that was on both Buffy and for Angel, which is Juliet Landau, actress, director, producer extraordinaire, over 20 starring films that she's been in, and also on television. You've seen a lot, you've actually heard her voiceover work that's been in video games and television. She's constantly working. One of the great things that hopefully you got to see her in is in Ed Wood, was done by Tim Burton, which she starred with Johnny Depp. Very, very fun film to be able to see that. She's the co-director of Dream Out Loud, which we showed here a few years ago with her husband, Deborah Weeks, which is about Kazuhiro Tsuji. And she's currently co-directing a feature called A Place Among the Dead. You may not know much about it right now, but you will. It's going to be epic. It's going to be a 6-part series. It's just incredible. But, of course, we all know her as Priscilla. Will you please welcome our distinguished panel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Well, and thank you guys for coming and being part of this. 20 years, my goodness. Hard to believe it's been that long. I think we were just children when that was made. That's the reason why that is. I want to brag on just a little bit because I was fortunate enough to work on the pilot episode for Buffy and several episodes on the first season because this gentleman to my left was kind enough to hire me, and it was such a joy to come and work for Todd McIntosh. I showed up at work for the day, and something happened that wasn't normally used to. My start paperwork was on my station. I had the appliances that I needed. I had the makeup colors to go with it, glue to go with that, I think the Bondo, and everything I needed to do the job, and some candy. It made me very welcomed, and one of the most organized department heads I ever worked for was for Todd. And such a joy. 7 years of Star Trek where you almost have to go find your own talent. It's like a scavenger hunt. Where's the glue? Well, I need the Pax color for the Klingons. And if you don't know where it is, you're screwed. You just, you think. But to come on to Buffy was a joy. Todd, I want to start with you on that. I want to hear how you became part of this epic series that we're celebrating today.
All right. I was doing the Brady Bunch movie, and I had heard that they were making a TV series of the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I had gotten into makeup because of Dark Shadows. I love vampires, and I wanted to do it. So I found out that the actress who was playing the middle Brady, I don't know which one that is, Jan, was going in to audition for the show. So I asked her to take her resume in for me and just sort of slip it in the pile. And nothing happened. Didn't get the job. I figured that's gone. And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the prosthetic house that was supplying prosthetics for a pilot, a presentation actually, which is a partial pilot for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they hired me to be the department head. So that's how I got in. That was Tom and Barry Berman, and that started the role.
That's great. I forgot that Tom and Barry had done an earlier the presentation. Thank you. That's a great word to do that. And it's, as they did for many shows in LA, they would be called in to kind of get it started, and then when it gets going, they hand it off to other people. Would you grab a microphone and do that?
I should also mention that the people that worked on the presentation hated it. Joss was there sort of directing and said to all the rest of us, help me out, anything that you can do, this is my first time directing. And most of the crew just said, this is unwatchable. The script supervisor said she couldn't read the script or understand it. It would never go. No one's ever going to watch this. I sat down with Joss afterward and said, I want to do this show. If it comes, I want to do this show. And I was the only person from the presentation that was taken on.
That's a great story. I'd love to hear, so that we can get this established, about the look of the Buffy vampires, because it was a fantastic look. And as I can tell you, the quality of the appliances was like feature film quality. We had dinner last night, and we were discussing a bit, reminiscing about doing the show, and as how the appliances were so much better than anything else that we really had in television. So, Todd, can you just talk a little bit about that? Who was making those pieces and how the look of the vampires was established?
Where is my magic wand? Okay, so while I was working for Tom and Barry Berman, I was there at their lab when Joss came in to look at the drawings, and they were all loosely based on Lost Boys. There was a plan here. There was something underneath what was going on. Joss did not want his heroine to be killing people that looked like they were human. He needed them to look like monsters to justify what was going on. It was a big deal with the television network as well. And that's why that face happened. So they started with the concept of Lost Boys. Tom and Barry Berman did sketches. The first vampires were done for the presentation. And when we went to series, it switched to Optic Nerve. And Optic Nerve was with us from season 1 to season 5 or 6. And they established the quality that you're talking about. It was astounding to get this package and look at the sculpture, and I'd get lost in it. They were so beautifully detailed and sculpted. I'd never seen that on a TV show. Usually you whip it out as quick as you can and move on to the next project. But they were doing film quality work for us.
Now that was great. And just from my memory, how many seasons did Buffy go? 7. And you were there for 5, 6? There's 6. So you weren't there for the last season. And so I worked only on the first season, I think. I think that's something like maybe the second. At most, it was the second. And Tom, you were the other end of the bookends. You worked it more towards the end. When were you there?
Well, I'm the only person, as far as I know, who worked on the film, the feature film Buffy, and then I came in on the 7th season and worked through that, which was interesting. Because as I like to tell everyone, I told Todd many years ago, I wish I could have been on the good Buffy, because time I came along, we had another shop doing the prosthetics, and it was a fight. It was not, we had a couple optic pieces that they brought in, like Clem. We brought Clem back and everything, and I got to do that, and it was beautiful. It was, but we were dealing with another shop that wasn't very experienced, and things that weren't set up, silicone gloves that were gooey on the inside. So we don't have gloves today.
And so I get to David. David, you worked, David worked on both sides of the camera for Buffy. And actually, that's something I've learned more in the past week or so. Actually, I knew he'd been on there one time, but if you're not following his Instagram, you really should be. Because I was like, oh, he was there again. Oh, look, there he is in another makeup and another makeup. It's like, oh, I think he spent more time in front of the camera than he did behind the camera. So, but you also, really, your greater contribution is to Angel, is it not? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you became involved?
Well, as far as an actor, Buffy's my only credit. Todd actually called me up one day and said they need some extra vampires for a couple scenes in an upcoming episode. Do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, why not? And I think I was in 3 or 4 scenes.
It was the 2-parter that won us the Emmy.
Yeah.
The episode Surprise.
If I had done one more, I would have gotten my SAG card. So, but anyways, I did some day playing on Buffy, but I actually was the key on Angel, which was the spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I did 2. I think Angel ran 5 seasons. It was a hard show.
And you did the first 2 seasons?
I did the first 2 seasons. Yeah.
Wow.
We. In hindsight, if the movie or TV show says vampire, that means they can't come out unless it's nighttime. So we worked, and our lead character was a vampire, so he couldn't come out during the day, so we worked a lot of nights. So, but it was a fun show.
Yeah, those night things are tough. We all grew up watching The Night Stalker.
Yes.
And it's a TV show. If you guys don't know, it's about this guy who's a reporter, and he's finding all these, much like Buffy, there's vampires and there's werewolves and there's Jack the Ripper type characters. But I got to talk with some crew members when I was young that they had worked on it, and they all told me they hated working that show because it was all night shoots. And so it seems like that would get to be a bit of a drag to have to do that.
Buffy was actually tricky.
Buffy the Weekend Slayer, yes.
Yeah, although Buffy was interesting because we'd start sometimes the beginning of the week at 8 a.m. because of all the stuff that was days as opposed to Angel where the lead character was a vampire. And then we'd be doing nights by the end of the week. So you'd get really kind of, you do the splits.
And my friend Juliet, it's so great to actually have you on this side of it. Juliet's a good friend, and it's just something to have her in her official capacity, what people know her as. I've never really heard the story, I think, of how you became to be on the show. What was it?
I went in for a creative meeting, and it was with Joss. It was with Marsha Schulman, who was the head of casting at Fox Studios, David Greenwald, one of the producers, and Gail Berman, one of the producers. And we had this phenomenal, just creative meeting where we bounced ideas and talked, and it was just incredible. And I think I did a little bit of Drusilla, like I sort of wafted up to the ceiling and started speaking to it or something. And I left, and I was like, well, that's really fun. And before I got to my car, my phone rang, and I was like still in the building, and I looked, and it was my agent, and she said, oh, they want to hire you. And I said, well, I haven't even left the building yet. So this is amazing. And so it was one of those that was just like immediately we had an incredible sort of, working relationship. And then Joss, I went in for, they paired me with the 5 final choices of Spikes. And so that was an interesting process. And then he also said that he had had Spike and Drew running around in his head for 10 years. And so we sat down and he told me all about like what he had, you know, thought about the character before beginning, which was really exciting.
And, you know, one of the things that's unique for you is, you know, being in the front of the camera and that, so when people see you, they as an actor, whatever they associate you with, whatever that's role, and that's probably the role, if I'm not mistaken, probably the most recognized for when people.
I think that, yeah, Ed Wood sometimes as well. I mean, and Drew. The thing that's funny is Drew is such a specific character. So often people are like, "You're nothing like Drew." I'm like, thank goodness. You know, she wasn't the most healthy of characters. You know, so luckily I think I'm a little bit more sane than Drew.
And that's continuing. You have like a comic book, and there's all these things that you have that it's like that the character really hasn't stopped for you. Can you tell us about just some of the other things that Drusilla's been in?
Yeah, well, they did. IDW asked me to write, so I did a 2 comic book arc that I co-wrote and did all the worked with all the artists very particularly and specifically, and so that was really, really amazing. And then that's really it for Drusilla, but then I'm doing with Deverell, my husband, A Place Among the Undead, which is all vampires, and so revisiting with Joss and interviewing him and Tim Burton and like all these people, this has been really amazing, and Todd as well. We got to interview Todd.
Good. You touched on it. Would you just kind of share with our audience a little bit about more what that project is? Because I want you guys to know what it is, because I know you're going to love it. If you love Buffy, you're going to absolutely adore this.
It is the definitive documentary series about vampires and myth and pop culture. And we have the who's who of the vampire genre already. As I mentioned, Joss, Tim Burton, Gary Oldman, Anne Rice, Willem Dafoe, Ron Perlman, Robert Patrick, Lance Henriksen, Charlaine Harris, who wrote the books that True Blood is based on. I mean, it goes on and on. Kevin Greavius, who created the Underworld franchise. And each episode culminates in a 5 to 15 minute narrative film as well. So we've been shooting in New Orleans and London and Los Angeles and Paris. So it's been really amazing. So we're hard at work on that. And then also we're in post-production on a feature film at the moment too. So that's going to be coming out next year as well. So.
Does that sound great or what? That's going to be really, really fun. So, David, tell me a little bit about for you being Buffy, being a vampire. You've been on both sides, so you're doing makeups and you've had makeups that's on there. How'd you like being a vampire?
I hated it. I guess I'm on the right side of the camera because I love putting makeup on people. I hate wearing makeup. It just, after about 4 hours, it felt like my skin was just crawling, and I didn't like it.
So
Sorry.
Did that give you more empathy for those in your chair?
It really did. It did.
Did it change your routine in any way?
No, I mean, God, we got those makeups down so fast, especially the vampire makeups. I mean, we would pre-glue and then, double glue, bang them on, and we did them really quickly. I mean, we could do them in 20 minutes, I think, at one point. So
there were some interesting things that happened during the arc of Buffy and Angel, and technically. So we started doing things one way, and every year I would come to work and they say, "Oh no, we don't do that anymore. It's this." So we started finding ways to cut through the problems. For example, if we would start with Juliet in the morning as a vampire, put her on green screen, take the makeup off, put the beauty makeup on, and she would be shot for the beauty side of it. When you took that off, there was all that glue and the glue balls and the problems. We discovered that if we put it on with Duo, which is very, very tricky to do, so you roll an edge in Duo, you're done. And then when it came off, it could come off with soap and water. And there was no slick on the skin, so you could put a beauty makeup directly on right off top of it. So that kind of thing was coming out of the long days of work on these shows.
Interesting. Somebody give it a mic. I want to delve into that a little bit more. Todd, when you put a piece down in Duo, it, as you said, it is kind of tricky. In fact, I remember on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, there was somebody that was putting down a feature character in Duo, and it ended up being lifting and become, problematic, sweats rising, and they were chasing it throughout. how did you prevent that from happening?
The whole trick there was that they would go from the makeup trailer and stand in front of a green screen and go back. Right? It wasn't like a whole day that they had to wear that in, because the minute you start to sweat, that's gone. It's done. But for that trick, for that effect,
Although you did it with me more often because I have such sensitive skin, so I remember that we actually use do as the eyelash stuff, right?
Yeah.
But you did that with me instead of using the glue because of my skin.
But again, there's a specific thing going on there. She needed less harsh glues, but also Juliet doesn't sweat buckets.
Well, David Boreanaz's vampire makeup was always done with duo.
Was it?
Yeah. Once we started the show, and he figured out that he could just pull it off himself. He was always done a duo.
Right.
So
we did discover, though, that the fastest way to deal with it is to put the chair back and put the appliance on from above. That way you could see all the edges at once and you didn't roll them.
And also, these were huge shows. I mean, we had days on Angel and Buffy where there'd be 25 additional makeup artists and 50 vampires, and it was volume-wise. I haven't worked on a lot of shows. I mean, Star Trek, but quite often the episodes were huge. I mean, it's like we were shooting feature films, but with the stunts and you know, the volume of the makeups.
We had multiple units because we were, finishing up, completing the entire thing.
Well, that was through our seasons as well.
And
you'd have 3
Angel
sets going at once, all run out of the one makeup trailer. So there's a green screen set, there's the pickup set, there's the current episode.
We had like a location scene, and I was shuttling between all because I had bringers, and then I had Uber vamps, and I had my beauty makeup girls, the potential slayers that were in the 7th season, and like I ended up buying multiple set bags because I just started running out of room. And I want to say a big thank you also to Todd, because early on when you were designing the makeups, you came to me and asked for a prosthetic paint color in my line. And I came up with something that I lovingly, I was going to call it Todd. He's like, no. and so it's called Vampire Slayer. And to this day, people are like, they'll do a YouTube video with it, and it's probably one of the most popular colors.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I tell everyone how you underpainted everything. This man's a genius, and the thing is, the look of the vampires, because when we first started talking, I'm like, are you going to need like Elvira and like really pale colors? And you're like, no, they're going to be more fleshy because of the lighting and this, and so the technical end of the makeup to make them look so fleshy and real. It's Todd's eye. I mean, a big hand for that, because
a lot of that
gorgeous.
is born out of necessity. In the first season, when I was doing Darla in fight sequences, they wanted her pale. They wanted the vampires white. But we were working in a tin shed with no air conditioning, and I could not keep any makeup on her. This is long before Illustrator, long before all the products that are in this room were invented. So we would have white to here and this big red pink circle there. So we started changing the way we approach the makeup, making it more fleshy, and the light part being the highlight or a wash or a dry brush over top of it to lift it. But once we started doing Illustrator, and that was Kenny Myers, and he brought me this one palette, said, I've been playing with this, I don't know if it's any good, try it on your show and let's see what it does. And it had a sort of off-white color in it, and that's what I started using to make Spike's scar in his eyebrow. And then I experimented a little further, and then I suggested to him, let's try this color and that color, and we came up with Illustrator out of that event. Kenny, of course, came up with it. I don't do anything except make suggestions.
Also, both Angel and Buffy, we did all the beauty makeups too. It wasn't like there was a separate prosthetic team. If you worked on the show full time, you did all the beauty characters and all the prosthetic characters. There was no separate crews. Well, it's important because of continuity with characters. I mean, I did Darla on Angel, and I think we started with her as a 15th century whore dying of syphilis. That was my first makeup I did on her. And we did some beautiful restoration makeups. We did 1930s. We did, and I was her makeup artist. I did all of them. There wasn't like they brought in a separate person to do it, and it saved them a lot of money.
It's also that was in keeping with most of the shows in LA in the 90s. You know, Star Trek, it was the same team, not only applying the makeups, beauty makeups and prosthetic makeups, but we were sculpting the pieces and making the molds, and very, very wise and astute choice by Michael Westmore, who made a fortune off of that. It was genius for him to do it. But it's same thing, Alien Nation. It was really the same team that was doing that.
Our generation especially really look up to Michael Westmore because he was sort of the godfather of that kind of makeup. It's like he wasn't just one type of makeup artist, he did it all. And they're just, I didn't know that there were people that did either or. I thought you did everything. So
yeah, that's more of a recent thing. You know what I do want to talk about is that yes, there obviously was lots of vampires on the show, but those weren't the only characters. I know that there were werewolves and other things. Todd, tell us about the other creatures of the night that we got to know on Buffy.
Well, what can you say about that variety of things that Joss Whedon can think up out of his crazy mind up there? We would get a script and it would say a white veiny demon, and then over the weekend Optic Nerve would build something, and when I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning for my call time, there would be a cardboard box on my front doorstep with the white veiny demon. The first time I'd see it was when I unpacked the box on my station that morning to put it on. Sometimes we got some advance notice, but that's television, you know, all the way through. You sometimes get an actor cast on a Friday and they work Monday. So that means the Optic Nerve people or the lab people are working 24 hours for 2 days and then they go home and crash. So what we ended up with was a lot of crossover experimentation. Like I would get a box and it would have a fiberglass skull, but nobody had talked to the hairdresser about the fiberglass skull that was going to hold the horns on underneath the appliance, and they couldn't put the bobby pins through it to put the wig on. So then you'd have to go to props and get them to put screws in that someone could bobby pin something to. It was that kind of thing. It was an inventive, fast-paced, do-it-in-the-moment thing. We had, oh God, well, the gentleman, of course. That a lot of the times I've asked what I use for inspiration, and that is really a hard question to answer. It's all about taking what's around you and funneling it through your imagination so that you can make something happen. So we had books of insects, we had books of dinosaurs, we had anything. And one night I was standing outside the trailer with this piece of rubber for the gentleman that I had just been delivered, saying, it works tomorrow, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to paint it so it doesn't look like the master. And Joss was standing there, and I said, what do you think I should do with this? And he said, I don't know. Great, thank you, Joss. So I had a flash on that face in The Exorcist, that white face with the black eyes and the red, and yeah, and that's the one that I used as the basis for the gentleman makeup. We put veins on and we put all the other details in, but that was where it goes. But that's how you worked. One day I was walking on stage 2 where we weren't filming, trying to get inspiration, and I saw a carpet rolled in the back. So I started kicking it and sort of unrolling it, and it had this lining of mold underneath, and I thought, that's it. So when you see Glory's henchmen, and they've got all this funny green-gray stuff on them, it was copying the carpet in the stage 2.
Didn't you also do most of the Universal, sort of a tribute to most of the Universal monsters, like the Mummy and the Wolfman?
Yeah, Joss did that. Yeah, the Invisible Girl and the Mummy and all of those. That was Seth Green played Oz, who was the werewolf. Yeah, but the actual actor inside the werewolf was a stuntman named Lee Whitaker, and he had grown up on a farm and spent a lot of time imitating the animals on the farm, and he was the only stuntman that could run on his feet and front legs and make it look like a wolf running down a hall instead of you want to crawl on your knees. That's your obvious thing. So he was also our devil dogs. He was in there a lot. He's saying the John Ritter makeup with the face peel. Again, invention in the moment. We knew we wanted to do that. That was Optic Nerve's design. But they had a guy named Mike Pack who did eyeballs and teeth and made all of the teeth for the show. And he had to invent 2 plates of teeth that wrapped from the inside of the mouth over the lip and onto the outside. So the teeth went from mouth to cheek, and then the appliance went over top. But that means free-forming the gums and the teeth without any life cast to work on. It's a really tricky thing to do, but again, they were trying to figure it out.
So the effect was the skin was torn off and you saw the jaw exposed.
But unfortunately, because the tooth became part of his lip at that point and went outside, he couldn't close his mouth, so he drooled all night. Just drooled.
John Ritter like you've never seen him before. It's a really great episode. It's one of the emotional episodes, I think, and seeing his reaction, because he's playing off a nice guy, but then Buffy discovers he's not even a guy, he's a thing. But yeah, and it's funny because the show also had so many ups and downs. You had your comedy bits, but you also had your dark, scary bits, and then you had like the human drama. And the writing on the show was really damn good. I mean, it was good. It was really good. And it spoke to people, and it's just such an honor to be a part of it. And anyway.
Juliet, you probably talked to Joss more about the writing of the show than any of us did. He had very specific ideas about presenting human problems and high school problems.
He did. I mean, it's funny because Joss says when he tells everybody that the whole metaphor of the show is high school is a nightmare, nobody ever has a follow-up question to that, because everybody can relate to that. And I think that's one of the things that made the show so good and so everlasting, or people still relating to it, is that everything was rooted and had a deeper meaning. For instance, when Joyce found out that Buffy was a Slayer, he wrote it all as if she was finding out that Buffy was gay. So the dialogue is like, are you sure you're a Slayer? Can you try not to be a Slayer? There's all, and it's like, so, he made things have a resonance and wrote things in a way, and that I think were always had, so many, which is why you can watch the show and find something new every time.
I hadn't thought about this, but yeah, it's supposed to be about high school, but 7 seasons. Usually somebody's not in high school for that long. How was that?
She goes to college. She went into college, so yeah.
So that's how it. So college, I guess, can be a nightmare as well.
The world can be a nightmare, right?
They had a whole horde of demons that were under the college and a campus. So it was a nightmare.
Juliet, what were they giving you as your motivation for your character and where you're supposed to be coming from? It would be great to just hear a little bit. You've never told me any of this stuff. I never asked you before.
Well, it was interesting because the very first meeting that I talked about that I had with Joss, I went to it and he said, everything he said contradicted itself. So I actually left the meeting thinking, oh my God, I don't know how I'm ever going to do this. For instance, he said, so Drusilla is very delicate, but she's extremely strong. She's very childlike, but she's sensual. She's really sweet, but she's diabolical. She's like everything he said, he kept saying the opposite to. But ultimately, that was part of the thing that made the character so interesting, is that she had so many different levels. And very often, especially on television, villain characters can be one-dimensional, and here was a character who had this epic love affair for 200 years, who had been abused and mistreated, so she wasn't super healthy, but there was all these, she was very childlike, but she was very uber sexual, so it just made the character like a complete joy to work on, because you rarely get that kind of material.
No, in talking, as we were putting this together and knowing that David still works with Sarah, say, hey, would she come out and play? And he's like, nah, she doesn't play in this sandbox anymore. And saying it's some of the fan base can be a little bit challenging. But has that been an issue for you at all?
It hasn't. I've actually found that the Buffy fans are an amazing group of people. I mean, just like, and it's an incredible demographic, from really young people to 85-year-olds, and then people that loved the show when it was on if they were, you know, young, and then now they're sharing it with their kids. And so for me, you know, I thought at first I might get like the necrophiliacs, or I might have like really weird, and it really hasn't been that way. I mean, it's super intelligent, articulate, interesting fan base as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, that's so great. So it's wonderful when it's like that you can enjoy the character you did and continue to celebrate that along with the current work and what you've done since too. That's really awesome. Actually, David, what is, you told me some of the things that Sarah's involved in that I wasn't as aware of. What is she doing now?
Well, first of all, she does have very fond memories of Buffy, and she's very grateful for the opportunity. And but she's a mom now. She's got 2 amazing kids, and she has a new company called Food Stirs, which is like a Betty Crocker kind of thing. And she's in supermarkets and has a big online presence and has really been working on that. We've done 3 television shows since then, about 5 or 6 movies. So she's still acting, obviously. And
On those projects, David was her personal, but I was the department head, like ringer. That's the way we worked it. So we both worked with Sarah a couple of times since then.
Okay. I'd like to hear from each one of you guys your favorite Buffy moment working the show. It's good because everybody has a different story. David, why don't we start with you, because you were on the short amount of time, so it'd be easier for you to choose, probably for you.
well, for me, as an actor,
I just love the way you set it up and the pregnant pause that comes with it. Well, for me, it's
actually, my
actor.
favorite part of that was doing a scene with you, which was really, really funny. I played her kind of henchman, butler, kind of major domo kind of character, and I was setting the table for I think you were having a party or something.
Yeah, because it was the episode where my character got strong for the first time, so it was my coming out
And
party.
so I'm setting the table, and she has a total
Freak out.
flip out, meltdown.
About the flowers.
And I was really kind of in the scene, and I don't know what I did. I don't know what face I was pulling, but they stopped the camera. Everybody was laughing. The whole place, but they're like, it's too funny. You can't. And of course, I saw spin-off in my head. I'm like, well, obviously, David the Vampire is the next spin-off of the show. No, that was really fun. On Angel, it just was. The one thing that sticks in my mind was putting a stunt lady in a full body prosthetic. I mean, we're talking tip of her toes at the top of her head. She played a insect creature. She had never worn a prosthetic before. So I'm talking, she'd never worn a nose, nothing. Full head to toe body. And of course, 3 or 4 hours later, passed out. And yeah, there was a lot of those kind of things where people were very new to the process, and we took them to the full Monty.
Juliet, you have probably so many, but is there one that's a standout moment for you?
It's hard to pick a standout moment because really there was so many. But I'd say the second season of Buffy, James and I, from when I said his first moment, he came in with the 5 final choices as Spike, and we just immediately had such an incredible acting chemistry. And he has a theater background, as do I, so that season we would get the scripts in enough time in advance that we at least a week, and so we would get together and we would rehearse, and we would come in with all these ideas, and that was just so much fun because you could bring the work. We'd come in and they'd basically be like, oh, well, that's great. And blocking of a scene, for the people that don't know, is like where you're moving within a scene. And so they'd kind of be like, oh, well, that's great, let's shoot it very often. And so we would come in so prepared that we were able to do work, like bring it to another level by rehearsing. And that was, again, really rare in television and really fun. And we also decided, these characters are supposed to have been together for 200 years, so we couldn't be shy with one another. It couldn't be like, oh sorry, And so we wanted to be extremely comfortable with one another and have a real fluidity. And I think, we were able to achieve that, hopefully.
Nice. Tom?
Well, there's so many weird ones, and once again working nights. On the film, there was a couple ones, but one of the choice memories was lunch. Because we didn't, our caterer was just mediocre, and so we would all take turns going into Rutger Hauer's trailer or Paul Rubens' trailer and cooking. And when I would have a later call, I would go shopping and bring stuff in, and usually do Thai food. Michelle, the department head of that film, her ex-husband used to do Italian because he was Italian from Italy, do Italian food, and we'd sit around drinking wine and Rutger's trailer or like Paul Rubens' trailer, and and having a really civilized lunch, and then we'd go back to work. But yeah, it was, and then on the show, I mean, there were so many good memories that last season, and the last few nights, I think it was the very last night, because we had so many things going. I brought a bottle of vodka in, like potato vodka, and stuck it in the mini fridge. And I had little shot glasses, like those cheap plastic ones, and then during makeup removal, we were all doing shots of vodka, and but yeah, it was.
So drinking and eating is Tom's favorite moments on Buffy.
Yeah, it was such an achievement to finally get through all the nightmare stuff, and like it was crazy because the Hellmouth had opened at that point, and anyway. Oh, and really makeup related one, Spike. I got to do James's makeup as Spike for the last time on Buffy because Peter had to go do Billy Crystal's makeup. Oh, Peter Montagna. He was my boss. He was the department head for the last season of Buffy, and just I love the guy. He hired me to come and play and just do the dance of vampires again. It was a blast, and he's one of the funniest guys you'll ever meet. As he works with so many comedians, so he's just quick, and it was always a laugh. Sometimes really bad because they would be rolling, and you're like doing that. So.
I have one quick, somewhat makeup-related story that was a bit tricky, which is when, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were doing the sequence where my character has to kill Kendra with my nails, we had shot right before it, my character back in the day before she's a vampire in 1805 or 1859 or something, I forget, I think it was like 1850 something. And so we couldn't have the Drusilla manicure, which was basically either black with white tips or red with white tips when I got strong, in the 1800s. So Todd was like, well, we have no time to let the manicure dry, so why don't we do those press-on nails? Which ended up being amazing for the close-up shot of slicing her neck, but for all of the fight choreography, we kept having this thing where the nails were going bing, 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 and they kept flying all over the place. And that whole sequence was so crazy because I was in like 4-inch heels, my nails kept popping off. I was rehearsing with Bianca, who was playing Kendra, and every time we were rehearsing the fight, she was supposed to kick me right around here, and she did it, and we did it by the numbers, and we sped it up, and the minute they yelled action, I see her foot coming straight for my head, and I'm like, oh no, and I hear this clunk, and she kicks me in the head, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'm such a girly girl, I'd never been hit. I was like, oh, you really do see stars. And I kept going because I never want to ruin a take. I was a dancer, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this out. And I remember in the sequence, I actually had to grab her by the neck, and I grabbed her by the neck, and I looked at her like, don't you fucking do that again. It's actually the take that's in the show, excuse me. And I'm like, I bloody hope my nails stay on for this one. And I back her up, and I back her into the wall, and she looks at me, and she's like, yeah, and we got the whole sequence, the nails stayed on, and that was it. And then they actually had to drive me home because I had a concussion, and I couldn't drive, but the scene worked really well. But anyway, the nails were crazy.
That's excellent. Lovely, lovely story. Todd.
We hated those nails.
Yeah.
The master had long nails, they were flying. The creatures had nails, they'd break off.
I was flying around, you're trying to be menacing, and it's bing, bing, bing. Sort of, contrary to the scene.
Give me one of your best stories from Buffy.
I really have a hard time with that because it was 6 years of my life. 6 years of stories and memories, and half of the stuff I've forgotten. I just have overlapping memories. I remember a day that I was so exhausted at the end of the day, and I sat down and realized that I had just done the union trade test. I had done every single makeup that was required of a makeup artist to pass that test. So I guess I passed on that day. I remember some really lovely moments. It's a very odd thing that happens at 3 in the morning when you've got yourself and an actor who have just woken up and you're alone in the trailer and it's dark and it's quiet and you start talking. There were moments with Juliet that they're still in my heart. There were times that you shared with those performers. I remember a few with James that were just long, heartfelt, deep discussions. I remember a night where we were filming, it had gone on till 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was going to the production office for something, and walking towards me was Joss, and there was no one else around, and I nodded at him as he passed, and he was looking down at the ground, and as he got good 100 feet behind me, he called me back and came over to him and he said, "I just want to tell you, you're the only department I never have to worry about." That was a lovely memory.
Great compliment.
It was just such a nice thing. Sure, there's lots of bad things that happen. There was the day when the Oswolf comes around the school, scrabbling, runs right towards the camera, and his jaw is hanging.
No.
Yeah, those are the fun days. But in general, I remember a lot of really loving, sweet moments between us all in that process of getting it together.
Great. I have been asking all the questions that I want to ask. I wanted to give you guys a chance. Actually, I haven't even looked to see how we're doing. We could sit here and talk for 2 hours easily on this. Good. Got a few minutes to do this in. Love it. So.